Hello. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. I'm Shakita Battle, and today is day 3 of the 3-day leadership challenge. I'm just waiting on people to come on in. This is day 3 of the 3-day leadership challenge. Okay. I can't wait longer. It is 7:15 and I've been coming in and out thinking there could be a connection problem, but I'm just going to roll with it. Come on in make yourself at home. I am Shakita Battle, your leadership strategist, helping leaders and individuals with leadership skills, helping organizations with their workforce development. I always say that in order to be a leader, you need to first lead yourself. So, day 3 of the 3-day leadership challenge, we're going to talk about traditional advice and how traditional advice, how it's good and all, but it doesn't create lasting results or change that's permanent. We're looking for some real lasting permanent results. And hopefully it'll give you tips along the way, a roadmap to living your best life. Welcome to the 3-day leadership challenge. I'm your host, Shakita Battle, and this is day 3 of the leadership challenge. I would like to thank you all for jumping on. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. Don't worry about it. That's so important. Thank you for coming. All right, jumping on. Um, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I was just waiting on some people to come on in, and let's just get started. I'm super excited about today because this is day 3. This is the final day of our leadership challenge, and it's been exciting. I enjoy doing these challenges because I feel like it really does help people go to the next level. I love entrepreneurship. I always did. And so today I'm going to talk to you about something that is bigger than entrepreneurship. It's bigger than just a profession or a job. It's about you because we're here to help you reach the next level and to become the best version of yourself. See, I'm a leadership strategist, and what I do is help people go to the next level. And I feel you can't really be a great leader until you learn how to lead yourself first. That's right. So, we in our Summer Rise program have some students that are interning, and they have been amazing. Really, they have. A joy to work with. So the focus this year is emotional intelligence, and we're focusing on responsibility. Let me recap. On day 1, we addressed the question, what is holding you back? We talked about the patterns we form because of internal dialogue. The internal dialogue affects language development, cognitive skills, and problem solving. Now, confidence is affected by the way you see yourself. Confidence. Confidence is the belief you have in your judgment. Confidence is the belief you have in your capacity and ability to succeed. So, we also discuss other feelings and how emotions are not bad, but sometimes the story we assign to those feelings, those are the wrong stories, right? And those wrong stories or false narratives causes us or may cause certain individuals to shut down. So we talked about the shutdown. We talked about what makes us shrink. Day 2, we talked about systems we can use to identify if we're replaying false narratives. Doing an inventory of what you are thinking at different times. We did an inventory of what we were doing at different times. An alarm would go off and we'd write down what we did. It was exciting. And that was just the first part, an important first part, so that you could feel what it feels like to stop and pay attention. Because the next thing I'm asking you to do is become aware of what you're thinking. What is the internal narrative or the story you're telling yourself, about this feeling? I gave an example about on yesterday, on day 2, I gave an example about how I assigned a story, a very false story about anger. I thought I couldn't get angry because I'll do something bad or I become a monster or something, hurting someone. And that was the wrong narrative. Why? Because anger is a natural emotion. When someone does something to harm you, you're going to automatically feel angry, right? And how I respond or diffuse those feelings, that's my next step. How I regulate my emotions, that is the thing I needed to learn. But before I could learn that, I had already given myself a narrative. I just can't be angry. And that was the wrong story that I put on the feeling of anger. So, what we talked about in day 2 is that how we assign the wrong story to our feelings and to confidence, right? So, we thought about the systems we could put in place so that we can become aware of our feelings, of our thoughts, of the internal dialogue. Now, today is day 3, and we're going to do something a little bit different. Traditionally, I'll just jump into the roadmap. But because my interns asked for me to slow it down, I decided, okay. So normally, I jump into a roadmap telling you this is good, this is this, and this is that. Ways to fix a problem. But I feel like we still are here on the narrative, the internal dialogue, and understanding where it comes from. And then we could talk about how to fix it. Because traditional advice hasn't worked. And why hasn't it worked? We're going to explore that today. We're going to talk about why haven't I solved this already? Why have people continued the same poor leadership skills? Or they may ask, why is it so hard to find the answers to these blockers? Because we talked about confidence blockers on day 1. And day 2, we talked about them some more. So why haven't we fixed it? There's a lot of information out there. It really is so much information. So it's not that you have the lack of information, but I think that is only part of the solution. The information you're getting, it helps sometimes, yes, but it's not fixing the core issue. So let's see if we could address that today. Now, most people have consumed, many leaders, I'm sure, have consumed years of advice. They have read books, listened, learned, and applied all the information, yet they still hesitate. They are still consistent with finding friction when it comes to solving problems or when it comes to handling disagreements. They run into this friction, but what we want to do is we want to have consistency in our results instead of having these consistent challenges. Why can't we have consistent positive outcomes? And how do we do that? We're going to do that by solving the core issue. The core issue is beneath the behavior. Like, okay, I'm hesitating because I want to make sure I explain this the right way. We get lots of advice, traditional advice. Speak up. You hear that? Sit up. Have better posture. It'll make you look more confident. We get great advice, right? Another one is just be more confident. I mean, like it's a switch we could turn on and off. It's not that we've gotten bad advice. I mean, what we've gotten is behavioral practices that we need to change. But the issue is beyond that. It's underneath behavior. So today we're going to talk about what's underneath behavior. So grab your paper and your pencil and let's take some notes. All right? Okay. Now, I talked about how people are getting consistent pushback, like they're consistently being challenged in their leadership or consistently being bullied. Maybe even that is another extreme, but it's true, right? We see people being bullied all the time. And it's very frustrating because we're reading the books, we're doing the things, but yet we haven't stopped whatever this is that comes at us, right? So I know it'll be frustrating for me. Traditional advice says, do this checklist, apply it here and do it there. And yet there's no change, no consistent change anyway, But the problem is not the effort, okay? And it's not about intelligence. It's not exposure to information. Like I said before, it's about solving the problem, the core problem. And it takes honesty and commitment for fixing a broken record or broken pattern. And reading a book is not enough. See, the problem we must fix is the thing that drives the behavior, the internal dialogue. Yeah, we're back to the internal dialogue. How do we fix the internal dialogue? We can't focus on behavior to fix character and confidence. It helps, but it's just not enough. And until you change the internal dialogue, nothing really changes, Until you change the internal narrative, change is temporary. So we want some permanent change. We want some growth, some real growth. And I hope you have come prepared because this is some good stuff, right? To learn how do we fix the problem? How do we have real growth? So why doesn't the traditional advice work? This great advice of speak up, be decisive, set boundaries, all good stuff. Yes, things we do want to do. Think positively, These suggestions are not wrong. But why haven't we seen consistent results? consistent, strong change and growth. There, it's not because of any other, not because you're doing the things wrong. I mean, that would be the first thought that would come to any individual's mind. I must be doing something wrong. It's not that you're doing doing the checklist wrong. You're checking it off, you're reading, you're applying what you've learned. But I think that the real questions you needed to ask, they go unasked. And they go unasked because you didn't know to ask them. But today I hope you'll start asking yourself these questions. You have to ask yourself, when you did shrink, you have to say, what made me shrink at that moment? What made me go quiet? Or what single experience I had before that made me doubt my judgment? What single experience I had before that made me feel like I wasn't safe to share or I wasn't safe to be me? See, we form internal dialogue based on something we've experienced or something somebody said to us. Behaviors are actions followed by something we truly believe about ourselves. That's it. It's just a belief you have about yourself. And we see your behavior. Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I definitely need better posture. And when I was in high school, my grandma, she worked tirelessly to say, don't slouch, don't slouch, don't slouch. I was fortunate to have children that when they came out, they just really didn't slouch. They just were like, that posture was on point, and it made me feel so good to see my children standing tall. But I had to ask myself, even then, I would ask myself, what's making me slouch? And I just found it almost impossible to fix the slouching problem. And then one day I thought about it really hard. And I was in middle school. In fact, I was in middle school. I was the second tallest girl in the entire school. I believe Kimberly was taller than I was by by at least 1 inch. And of course, there were a few boys who were taller than I was, just maybe one or two. So on one hand, I was like probably number 4 or 5 in being the tallest student in my middle school. And I just remember not wanting to be singled out. I wanted to fit in. So I would slouch to fit in. And so when I was older, I didn't think it's okay to be tall. I never thought that. I mean, I loved being me. I thought being me was okay. But I just wanted to feel like I that people thought of me like they thought about everybody else. And for me, the slouching part, I became conditioned to it, right? To poor posture. So no matter how much physical effort I put into proper posture, I literally didn't feel like a change happened until I coupled uh, understanding that about myself and my internal narrative. I coupled it with physical therapy because I just literally physically wasn't, my muscles had gotten so weak from the slouching that I needed to strengthen them. So it was a deeper problem. My grandmother, she loved me and she just wanted me to be better. She wanted me to present myself better. And at that time, I didn't know how to fix the low self esteem that I struggled with, my esteem problem. I wanted to be long, I wanted to be accepted. And I felt like being tall singled me out. And that was the thing that was causing me to be singled out, my height. That's not true. But it was the story I told myself. Are you getting me? The stories we tell ourselves. So you see yourself a certain way, but before you put yourself in a category, there are some things that you feed that belief, that's feeding that belief system, that's making you think or feel what you believe or what you're thinking is true. And when leaders begin to focus on just changing the surface things, the behavior, then it's hard to see leadership as real. A nagging voice tells us that we need to prove we are leaders and we need more power to do that. This narrative is also another fallacy, but one many people believe. On the other hand, on the other end of the spectrum, there are people that feel assertive, but they want to avoid the struggle. Any struggle. So they remain a fly on the wall. Neither one of these works to serve anyone. So we're talking about the people, the gap. We're talking about the gap between what you can become and how you see yourself today. And when I say can become, it's because you have the skills, you have the abilities, you have the talents, you have what you need already inside, but there is a narrative. There is something playing that keeps you back, holds you back from walking into that next level of growth. Sometimes we see ourselves talking about big ideas, but never implementing them. And as the thing we want to become, but we talk about the things we want to become, but yet we have not put them into practice. Efforts can feel mechanical when you just focusing on behavior, when you're just focusing on the surface and never solving the root issue. You feel like you're forcing it. And forcing anything takes a lot of energy. Like, I'm going to be a nice person. I'm just using that as an example, right? I hope you really are going to be a nice person. But if you're not a nice person and you just say, I'm going to be a nice person, it's going to be difficult because eventually the real you will come out. So when it is not really you and you want to make it look like you're doing these things, you have to remind yourself how to act. I want them to think I am just so sweet and so considerate. I have to remind myself, don't do this, don't do that. You must rehearse your responses and what you're going to do when they say this, you know? And you must monitor your tone. You're like, oh my goodness, I got to say it this way, and my posture has to be that way. And over time, that level of self correction becomes exhausting because the behavior does not fully match the belief system that you have about yourself. I used to get extremely tired. Let me give you an example. I used to become so tired. Extremely tired when I do a live video. I still get tired some days, but I think that I would get so tired because I just would always be aware of what I have on. Is it enough? Do I need my makeup to be perfect? Do I need my hair to be perfect? And it wasn't until I realized I'm enough. I look like I look and I am who I am. I like what I like, and that's okay. And I learned how to rest instead of overwork, over prepare. And when things aren't perfect, I just learned to let it go. It's okay. See, I learned some things about myself. I learned that I was overdoing things and it drained me. You know, I would go in front of certain people, and to this day, certain environments, they are very draining, not because I'm over rehearsing or overdoing things, but because I already know they have this judgment and this expectation. And even if I don't do the things they want me to do, it still drains me that that is the environment they prefer to be in and they want me to join in. So even being myself became a chore because I'm like, I'm fighting to not just go with the flow, because going with the flow causes, I don't want to deceive myself. I don't want to have like tell myself a lie and say it's the truth. That's just not me. I don't function like that. It's in honesty, real honesty, where growth takes place. I didn't want to go backwards. So sometimes we meet friends when we were in a broken place and they just want you to stay there. But it's better to grow. And if you need to make new friends, you do that. And if you have to leave some of your old friends behind, that's okay too. Because sometimes people are in our life for a season, a reason, and then there are others who are there for a lifetime, right? But that's not everyone, right? Everyone won't fit into this lifetime category. And I think it's great to have good friends. I want you to have lifetime friends. But if your friends are asking you to continue in a broken pattern, I hope you can find the strength and the wisdom to walk into your greatness, even if it means to walk away from that friendship. So, we're talking about how hard it is to sustain changing only surface things. It's hard to really have consistent results when it's just not real. You didn't handle the core issue. You didn't ask yourself those hard questions and take time to come with the answers. See, eventually you'll slip, like I said, right back into the way that you were before. Because you know why? Because it feels natural. It's familiar. Remember the slouching? It was natural. It was familiar. So I would slip right back into it. See, real leadership starts beneath the surface. The growth starts beneath the surface because when the internal narrative shifts, your behavior automatically shifts. It naturally shifts. And when belief changes, actions become consistent. Without the internal narrative shifting, even the best advice can feel wrong to us. I just spoke with my daughter about this study they did when she was younger. Um, the experts had said that older children need their parents more than the younger children, like than when they were younger, when children were younger. So my children were about 5 years old, and I said, no, I don't believe it. But now that they're teenagers and I see how there's been a shift in their behavior, I'm like, oh my goodness. I think it's true because growing up, you're going to get autonomy, right? We let you have more freedom. So I thought you'd need me less. You can wash dishes, you make decisions better than you did when you were 5 years old. You could cook a meal, you do your chores. So I was like, yeah, they won't need me as much. And then when my children became teenagers, I saw that the real issue was, or the problems were in the in between, the transition periods. See, you're transitioning from middle school to high school, you're transitioning from high school to college. See, in high school, the friend dynamics become more complicated. These transitions start to happen really in middle school. In elementary school, my kids didn't care about what people had to say about them. And then when they got to middle school, they became more conscious about, wanting to look the part and fit in. Like I said, I had that challenge in middle school. So when I saw my children running into that challenge, I just had to ask myself, wow, this is a shift. How do I help them through this? Because it is very taxing and emotionally heavy for them and for me. It was very demanding, to be patient through the tears and through the anger, through the explosion, through the tantrums. So I wanted to see if I could help them this way. I said I wanted them, if I could help them with the internal narrative or the thing that they said to themselves when they met tough situations, then I'll know I've helped them to the best of my abilities. I wanted them to be able to say, okay, I'm strong enough to walk into a room. Even if no one else thinks I belong, I feel all right being different. I wanted their internal narrative to help them hold their heads up, even when someone said something negative to hurt their feelings. I wanted them to still believe the best about themselves. So I just had to teach them. I thought the best way to teach them this was to teach them about integrity and character. Why integrity and character? Because that is the one thing no one can take away from you. So before the next thing I want to talk to you about are the myths, okay? There are some myths that we just automatically believe. I've named a couple in the beginning of our time together. And I made sure not to I tried to make sure that these myths weren't included in the teachings that I gave my daughter. I didn't want them to just feel like if I did these things, then my answers are here, the solutions are here. No, that's not reality. I didn't want them to have a false expectation. So the myth number one that I did not give them or tried not to give them was just be more confident. As I said, confidence is not like a switch you could just turn on and off. It is built over time, and I always knew that. I knew that because I was teaching middle school in Washington, D.C. When I was a middle school teacher in Washington, D.C., it was many years ago. It was over 25 years ago. I created this curriculum, the growth curriculum, because I felt like if these kids, if any children, any person had the skills, they could grow, excel, and move up in life no matter what their goals are. And so, one of the things that I first introduced to them, and I always, even as a guest speaker now, talk about is confidence. Confidence makes the world a difference. That's why I said I gave you the definition that confidence is the belief you have in your ability and capacity to succeed. I had one student in my classroom. He would come, middle school student would come to school late, or and he also missed a lot of days in the beginning. And when he would come to class, he'd smell like marijuana or something like that, like, he had been smoking. A middle school student. And I wasn't used to that. That was my first encounter with middle school students. Um, I'm knowingly addressing the drugs, and I honestly, I couldn't teach that group of kids without bringing in a counselor, because they were being exposed to adult level um, uh, toxins and conversations and responsibilities. And I can't go into their homes and fix it. I could call the home maybe to encourage the family, but I definitely couldn't go in and make things right with food insecurity, housing insecurity. They had a lot of things, a lot of challenges they were dealing with. And in that program, the first thing I would teach them about is confidence. I would tell them that it is the result of doing something right over and over and over again. You begin to have this belief that, hey, I'm going to get it right, and then I share with them limiting beliefs, the limiting beliefs of what we call the grasshopper effect. Now, a grasshopper can jump very high. And I'd explain to them, but if you put that grasshopper into a jar, put the top on the jar, then the grasshopper would jump, 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 and hit his head over and over and over again. But eventually, that grasshopper becomes conditioned to the top being, or the lid being on the jar. So when you release the grasshopper and the grasshopper would jump, 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 it could only jump as high as that lid, even though he was free. And that's because he became conditioned. Now, conditioning is a very old concept. It was how they thought education was to be taught in the very beginning, with conditioning. Uh, if you touch a hot stove, you get burnt. That's conditioning, right? So you know not to touch the hot stove. Uh, it's the same with behavior education or behavior teaching. They just thought if we focused on the behavior, then things would change for that student and that student would learn. But that wasn't always true. It may be true for a certain group, but it wasn't true for everyone. And it just showed that maybe that's not the best way of learning. It's still a study and it still is a concept. Conditioning, we see it all the time, but it wasn't the best. So we have scientists and educators who come together to teach the best way to teach a student and the best way to learn. So with confidence, you can't turn it on and off. It is a result of a form of conditioning, I guess. If you let limitations tell you and define to you what you can and cannot do, you'll live within the invisible walls and the invisible lid. But you have to know that the possibilities are limitless. You can accomplish a whole lot more. And that's what we're talking about when we say the gap, closing the gap. How do we close the gap between what we believe because we've hit our head over and over again to what is truly the possibilities, right? How can we walk into that greatness? Because I gave an example yesterday. Although my siblings were young and cute and had confidence because they were so adorable, no one expected them to get a job and then go and pay the mortgage at 7 and 8 years old. It just wasn't age appropriate. That wasn't an age appropriate demand. So confidence is not a single action. It is not a knob we can turn or adjust. It's a pattern. Remember, it's not your personality. It's not the thing. You remember you gave confidence its definition, like you gave anger its definition. We all feel these feelings of anger, but what is the story you told yourself behind it? So with confidence, we have to look at the narrative that we developed over time. And then we have to change it when it's the wrong narrative. And then we have to change it also when we're in college versus when we were in fifth grade, right? We have to change that narrative because in college, you can have a job. In fifth grade, you couldn't. So in college, you can manage your responsibilities better. In fifth grade, it would have been nice, but it's just age appropriate, you know? Mommy will make dinner. I'll worry about what's for dinner. So change, visible change, happens down deep inside before the behavior changes take place. The device, the advice focused, the past advice, you know, the general public advice, traditional advice focused on the behavior. And I want you to start focusing on the narrative so that you can start showing up as the best version of yourself. All right. So standing taller, speaking louder, project, you know, push the words out. Those are still external. But I want you to start thinking about the internal, which is uh, I can speak up. I will speak up because that is the right thing to do. Are there any questions before we go on any further? I've covered a lot, and I want to take time so that you could take it all in. I asked some questions yesterday, and the questions that I was with the diagnostic, the self-diagnostic. The self-diagnostic, we reviewed some of the things that the internal narratives and how we exchange that internal narrative. So today I wanted to go over some real life examples. Real life responsibility examples. So you could take all this in. I don't want to rush through the material and then give you more and more knowledge. I want to do real world action steps. Real life responsibility examples like owning actions and decisions. Example number 1, managing time. This is real. You can do these things. So I'm giving you an example of what's relevant to a teenager. Responsibilities that teenagers at where you are that you can handle. And you will get better in these areas as time goes along. Let's close the gap by identifying the areas where you are to be more responsible and how you can become even better as you get older. Okay, managing time. A teen who struggles with time management in school begins using a daily planner to track assignments, to put it in their test dates so that they'll know how to study, and their activities. You know, if you have piano lesson or if you have a sport, you put it on your calendar. So time management is age appropriate for a teenager. By staying organized and holding themselves accountable, teens improve their ability to meet deadlines and reduce procrastination. And procrastination is a temptation for all of us. I always say procrastination also steals from our confidence. I call it a confidence stealer. Another example of actions you can do as a teen that's appropriate is completing responsibilities at home. A young person is responsible for helping with household chores each week. Instead of waiting to be reminded, they create a schedule, and complete tasks consistently, showing accountability and reliability. Example number 3 is taking ownership in group projects. During a group assignment, a student forgets to complete their portion of the project. Rather than blaming others or making excuses, they admit the mistake, apologize, and work to correct it. This helps build trust and maturity. Example number 4, managing personal goals. A student sets a goal to improve their grades or athletic performance. They create a plan, track progress, and remain committed even when improvements take time. These are real life examples of how something that's age appropriate for teenagers. You should be able to do this. And you are able. That's the point. You are able. When you were in second grade, you had different responsibilities and you just showed up. But now that you're in high school, you're expected to be able to manage your responsibilities and your time. You learn through self-assessment. Example number 1 of learning through self-assessment is after an argument with a friend, it happens, conflict is natural. A teen takes time to think about what caused the disagreement, how emotions affected the conversation, and what could have been handled differently. An example of that is today I attended another internship programs event where they were doing headshots. And those photographs, they were being photographed, they were doing different things. And it was just truly a nice event with refreshments and everything. And the thing that I had to reflect on was I said something that was a little bit controversial. And this controversy, it was based on my experience. And this person who made the statement, who made a statement that I originally kind of pushed against, it was her event, and I felt as if I could have saved my opinion till later. So the next time I know, and I just will make sure that I won't do a comparison thing. What I'm doing versus what another leader is doing. It's no comparison. There's no right or wrong way to do things. And I made that clear in my explanation because I was letting them know it's just something I'm doing different. I'll let you know later if it works like that. But I just, I didn't think it was anything wrong with being different. But I did see that, she may have felt uncomfortable because it was a little bit of a little pushback. And it's okay to have conflict because it happens, right? So I didn't think any less of myself or any less of her. I just thought, next time I know, that's how some people respond. Learning from mistakes is another way to self assess. A student receives feedback about incomplete work. And instead of becoming defensive and angry, they reflect on their habits and identify ways to improve. And I think a lot of you in this group has done that. Understanding emotional triggers. A young adult notices they become frustrated when feeling criticized. And we talked about this too on yesterday. Some of these things we talked about learning from your mistakes, right? Decision-making reflection. So when you become triggered, I didn't tell you the solution. Through reflection and journaling, they began recognizing emotional triggers and learning healthier ways to respond. Example number 4 is, again, I was going to address this. I was jumping into the decision-making reflection. Before making an important choice, a teen pauses to consider possible consequences and whether the decision aligns with their goals and their values. So teens, if you want these examples, just email me and I can send it to you. Things that you are able to address because they are age appropriate requests. You can do them. Again, today we were talking about the way you see yourself and versus the what you can really do. You know, you can accomplish and do way more than you give yourself credit for. You could do way more than what other people may have put on you, meaning you're in growth, in your growth. And if you still see yourself as a 5-year-old or a fifth grader and you're in 10th grade, there's a gap and we have to help you to see yourself walking as that 10th grader. We have to help you get there. And another way besides journaling that can help, besides attending just different um, activities like this one that help you to reflect on questions that will uncover where you can find the questions, the right questions to ask yourself to uncover what's really underneath all of the things that's holding you back. Okay. But there is another option, and that is therapy. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a leadership strategist, and I'm telling you there are things that's holding you back that's unspoken and bigger and deeper than your behavior. But when we talked about finding triggers, sometimes the triggers are so big that we avoid them because they hurt so bad. And avoiding it only made things worse for us. So a healthy therapist, one that works well with you, that gives good advice, not just anybody, okay? I'm not saying that you just go and tell everybody your business or none of that, but I think if a leg is broken, we have to mend it right, or it won't fix right. It won't mend right. It won't set right. It'll just stay crooked. So you have to go to the doctor. And so there are mental health specialists for triggers that are extreme, that we just didn't have the capacity to hold. And we need someone to walk us through those things so that we could get to the other side. And in those situations, it's okay. Really is nothing wrong with going to someone and talking to them and them helping you get to the other side, right? Of that journey, of that challenge, of the trigger. So, are there any questions? I'm at the hour mark, and there was so much that I could still share. But like I said earlier, I'd like to thank my interns. They wanted me to slow it down so you could take it all in. It was truly a pleasure and an honor bringing you these tips. And I'm going to go ahead and finish reading the tips. And if you all have to leave, please feel free. But for those who wanted to hear the rest of the tips, I'm going to go ahead and go through the real life resilience example and then bouncing back example. I want you to know what is age appropriate, what are age appropriate expectations, and how to grow to be prepared for your next, because your next will have challenges. When I reached college, I had different challenges. I was so used to my mom cooking every meal, and I knew what I had to do for myself. I was just happy that I watched her. I was a student who watched from afar. No, she didn't make me do anything like cooking and stuff like that, but she was a great cook. She prepared meals daily, and they were very nutritious, very healthy. And so I had gotten into a pattern of eating healthy, and I wanted to keep that. To this day, I still love eating my vegetables and eating healthy because that was something that my mom formed a pattern um, of doing. So we're still talking about real life challenges, real life resilient examples. This bouncing back from setback, the first example is recovering from academic disappointment. Yesterday, I shared an academic disappointment, and I thought it was so big. I thought my college career was over because of that C. A young lady receives a low grade on an important test. Instead of giving up, they seek extra help, adjust study habits, and prepare differently for the next exam. So, that is something you could do to bounce back. Handling rejection is example number two. A student does not make the sports team or get or they do not get accepted into their first choice college program. Although disappointed, although disappointed, they continue practicing. They continue improving and exploring new opportunities. The third example is managing stress during difficult times. A teen feels overwhelmed balancing school, activities, and personal challenges. Instead of shutting down, they practice healthy coping skills such as asking for support, staying organized, and taking breaks when needed. So that's managing during difficult times. That's age appropriate. You have to learn how to rest, just like we had to learn how to study. I remember when I would study, I would do this hyper focus move and just stay there for hours. But now I tell people you need to focus. I mean, in order to improve your focus, you have to rest 4 hours, then take a break. Okay. You could take a break before the 4 hours, but don't go longer than 4 hours because the brain is designed to not take on anything else until it rests after that first 4 hours. And then you could start again, start the clock again. But that's how the brain functions, right? So biologically, we have to think about things that limit us. It's not just, the fact that we get tired. The brain can't function at its best when it's that tired. Example number four, bouncing back, is problem solving through challenges. When facing a difficult situation, a young person brainstorm possible solutions rather than immediately giving up or expecting someone else to fix the problem for them. Just what I was saying in college. No one's going to fix it for you. I mean, you have a support system, don't get me wrong, and you're supposed to lean on that support system. But it is you who will show up every day to the college. It is you who will show up every day. All right? And that was it. Those are the examples. Thank you for staying through the examples. I want you all to let me know what it is that you got from this. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to invest in yourself and in your personal growth. I love the time we've spent together in the 3-day challenge. And if you have any questions, you can email me at success@bvision.com. That's success@bvision.com. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow morning.